Despite recent speculation, Mike Baird says he absolutely intends to stand for re-election in 2019. The Premier believes there is much more to do in the job, which at times has taken a heavy toll, especially on his children. I sat down with the Premier to mark a year since New South Wales went to the polls and began by asking how quickly the electorate can turn on a popular politician.
I think the important point for any politician is, look, if you don't spend your political capital, it'll be spent for you. So my strong sense is you might as well do what you think is right. You're going to be criticised anyway.
17,000 Facebook posts were brutal about your lockout laws. Did you underestimate the passion out there on the issue?
If you go back to that particular post, I mean, I was responding to events 2 years previous. Why were these lockout laws introduced? Well, because we saw scene after scene of needless violence. And I was just making the point that it would take a lot to change my mind, because we saw that dramatic drop in violence. Our streets were safer.
I understand the safe streets, no question. At least 40 businesses in King's Cross have closed down. In one establishment, 70 people lost their jobs. What do you say to those mums and dads?
Yeah, it's difficult. And that's obviously not an easy thing to have to deal with. And that's part of what the review needs to consider. I'm not dismissing those concerns in any way, but you know, this debate is not just happening here, it's happening across the country. We saw changes in Queensland recently and across the world.
It was personal, the impact on your daughter. Can you tell us what that impact was and how you talked to her about that?
Look, I mean, I try very hard to keep my kids away from this. There were some incredibly hurtful things done and said, and I felt that very personally.
What did you say to her?
It's an apology. I mean, I don't want them to have to go through that, and it's just one of the consequences of being in this job.
I can see now it still has an impact. Obviously, has an impact on you. That the cost is the family get thrust into this.
The issue itself is fine. The attacks on you are fine. You know, you're human, and if those closest to you are being attacked, well, it hurts.
Another battle, of course, is council amalgamations. Are you willing to fight councils who say they will take the government to court?
Well, I'm prepared to stand up for the ratepayers of this state. I think it is in their interests in the long term to have smaller head offices and have more services and more infrastructure and downward pressure on rates.
Could you have sold the amalgamation policy better?
Of course. And, you know, there's any policy you push through, there are different ways you can go about it.
Can you go around again?
No,
2019?
Of course I can. Others seem to be sort of on the agenda saying, you know, he's not going to be here in 2019. I can assure you I'm going to do everything I can to be here. I'm very proud of what we're doing. I mean, you know, New South Wales has its mojo back. I'm determined to do everything I can every day I'm in this job, and there's lots more to do.
Thank you, Premier.